Hi, I'm Dr. Lindsay Coble,
Dr. Noel Crosby, and this is the Sound Sisters, the Hearing Diaries.
and today we are going to talk about something that people do not discuss nearly enough in leadership, healthcare, and honestly, just in life. And we are going to dive into getting fired. And Noelle has a story to tell and a story to share with us about her experiences getting fired and how she's come out better on the other side from that. So,
Yeah.
Noelle, tell us your
Oh,
story.
thank you. Yeah, if you've worked long enough, chances are you've experienced either firing somebody or getting fired at some point. And it really does affect you personally, but there's ways to navigate it and lessons to learn. So here we go. So the first time I got fired was when I was in college. I worked as a bartender waitress in different places, right? And so I was working at this one. I'd been working at a bar, bartending and serving, and this place closed. And so some of the people that used to come to this place owned a restaurant, and they asked me if I wanted to go and work for them. So I had just lost my job. I was still in school, and I'm like, yeah, because I wanted a job, and I didn't want to have to look for one. So I
Mhm.
ended up going to work for this little cafe, and you know what? I didn't like it. I just didn't like it. It wasn't for me. It just wasn't a good fit for me. But I felt like I owed them something because they had given me this job. And I also felt like I didn't want to look for another job. So I stayed at the job, but I wasn't very happy.
Mhm.
Like people would come in and I'd kind of be kind of pissy and, not as friendly as I should have been. So
Mhm.
one day the owner used to come in and be in the bar a lot. And he said, let me walk you to the car after work. So the way that he did this was just so artful, I thought. He said, Noelle, I just am noticing that you don't seem very happy here. And what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to just take a few days to just go
Mhm.
home and think about, is this a place you want to be? Do you think it's maybe not a good fit for you? And then you can call me back in a few days and let me know if you've
Mhm.
decided if you could want to stay, you're going to have to change your attitude.
Uh-huh.
But if you don't want to stay, no hard feelings, we'll just know it didn't work out. So,
Mhm.
it was very traumatic for me because up until that point, of course, I'd never experienced anything like that. And I knew that it was my fault. Like I
Mhm.
knew just didn't have the right attitude. So I went home and I thought about it. And of course, I called him back and said, yeah, I really appreciate, how you've talked to me about it. But I think you're right. It's just not a good fit. So I won't be back.
Mhm.
So we left in good terms. It worked out wonderful. He did not say anything negative to me. He just made me really look at myself. So
Mhm.
that was my first experience getting let go. And, it was something that really needed to be done, right?
Well, almost like he did you a favor. Like you would
Yeah,
have
yeah, for
probably just
sure.
kept working on your own, being
Yep.
miserable. My question is, was there something obvious that was different between the other place you worked at that closed
Yeah.
and this little cafe? What was it that you liked about the first place, but you didn't find your fit at the second place?
Yeah, and that's a good thought. I don't even know at this point if I could tell you what it was. Maybe it was the people
Mm-hmm.
or
Like your
the
coworkers or
yeah, and then
hours or.
maybe the
Mm-hmm.
hours or like the place that I was working at before was owned by actually two young people and it
Mm-hmm.
was a lot of fun. It
Uh-huh.
was
Yeah.
all their friends would come in and it that they closed because they didn't manage it very well.
Too
But
much fun.
too much fun. But it was just a different atmosphere. And this was more serious. Like this was
Uh-huh.
his business and he was there all the time. And he
Okay.
expected you to converse to the clientele in a certain
Mm-hmm.
way where you were
Mm-hmm.
friendly to them,
Mm-hmm.
and for some reason it just wasn't me.
But
And it
what a
wasn't
nice,
and it wasn't me, like I didn't feel like I should have been there because
yeah.
I wasn't in the best frame of mind. So
And like
yeah,
you said,
so
what a nice artful way for him
yes.
to walk you to your car to say, I recognize you're not happy. Think about it. Because I
Yeah.
think, some situations you may have said, oh, this is a me problem, and I
Yep.
do want a job, and I do need to make this work. I'm gonna change
Yep.
myself.
Yep.
But for you, it was like, that's just not a good fit for me. You went the other direction.
Yep.
Thank you,
And
but no thanks.
I wonder if I had done that,
Yeah,
if he would have said, "Oh, I wasn't thinking she was going to do," but
yeah,
he would have held me to higher standards for
right.
sure. Like I
Right.
would have had to act in a different way.
Yeah.
So that was my first experience getting
Neat.
fired. And then
Okay.
actually I got another job at a restaurant and had the best, it was a wonderful position. So
See,
all worked out.
meant to
Um,
be.
yes. So the other time I got fired, I had done a training job with Sonic. Then I had gone and left and done like a more like a regional network manager for Sonus. And then I went back to Sonic
Hmm.
as a sales rep, right?
Hmm.
Now, I thought I wanted to be a sales rep because I saw that you could make a lot of money. And, a lot of people I was like, well, I kind of want to do that. Like, I'd like to
Hmm.
make that kind of money. So I thought being a sales rep would be something that I would like to do. Well, when I got into it, at first it was pretty easy. I knew I had already been in Florida as a rep, so I knew a lot of people. So I was just able to transition into, getting people to buy from me because they knew me already in the other
Hmm.
positions. And I was just like the first year I was there, I did great. I was top salesperson, everything flowed great. And then they came out with a new product, and this new product really wasn't that great. I can
Hmm.
say that now. It just wasn't working the way it was supposed to, and I couldn't feel good about representing it.
Hmm.
Now, if anyone's watched my other video too about my perimenopause years, we will go back to I wasn't quite myself and I really wasn't in the frame of mind that I usually am in. So the combination of representing this company and this product that I didn't really believe in and my general well-being with my whole perimenopause wasn't a good combination, right?
Hmm.
So I made some judgments about doing a couple things where I just didn't think it through. Where I hired somebody to work. So in the meantime, I had bought my office, thinking I
Oh,
was going to own my office, but I wasn't going to work in it. So I
okay.
wanted to, my husband he had his tile business, and I was noticing that he couldn't really do the tile business as much
Hmm.
because of his health, and he had been doing that since he was a kid. So I thought, well, this office is for sale. Let's buy it and we'll just own it and we won't, I won't work in it. I'll still keep my job and
Hmm.
everything. Well, things always don't work out as you plan. And so the person that I hired to work in the office actually was somebody who worked at another office down the street.
Mm.
And this other person, she wanted to leave, but the person thought I took her, right? Which
Oh,
again
yeah.
wasn't the
Yep.
best judgment on my part.
Hmm.
I should
Hmm.
have had a conversation or just said, no, you can't work for me because I knew there might be a conflict.
Hmm.
I just wasn't thinking it through. So that was already one strike against me. And then I did something with an ad where I was going to borrow an ad to use for an account down the street, not for me, but somebody thought I was going to be using it for my own office.
Oh, hmm.
And so there was just this communication problem. And my boss called me up and just like reamed me out and fired me right on the spot, right? And there's a couple other things, that had happened, right? So that's just, part of the story. He had his reasons, but the way he did it was devastating. It was like, well, that's not what I wasn't even using the ad for me. I was
Mm.
using it for somebody like far away.
Hmm.
And it's ironic when you do something like that, and then things just kind of like um, happen where you don't really know why it happens, but it does. And so he fired me on the spot. I was done. I was so relieved. I didn't
Oh,
realize how relieved I
uh-huh.
was, but I was so relieved because I just didn't want to keep being the sales rep. And part of the
Hmm.
reason why I was doing it is because I had full insurance and everything, and I knew
Yeah.
if I had to work in my office, I wouldn't.
Hmm.
And so I was kind of keeping the job for the benefits, like a lot of people have to
Yeah.
do,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Oh,
Like
yeah.
I knew I couldn't support this product. I didn't feel good about the whole thing. And so when I got fired, I mean, like I said, it was devastating and humiliating. And, I had to redeem myself, right? I had to find a way to redeem myself. So I think shortly after that, I became the next the president for the second time of the Florida Academy
Mm-hmm.
because I had to show
Came
like I
back
was
around.
still, who I was. I went through my perimenopause. I came out on the other side, my normal functioning person. And I just, had to do a lot of soul searching and
Hmm.
just, figure out, well, what side of me was I showing that I didn't want to show, and why didn't I make good choices? And so I
Hmm.
ended up calling the person, and apologizing. And
Hmm.
I said, listen, that was not my intention. There was a lot of other things going on at the time, and so I had to kind of like face my negatives and
Yeah.
decide, well, this is something that I caused.
Hmm.
I'm not a victim.
Hmm.
I caused this myself
Hmm.
because I didn't make always the best decisions. And so
Hmm.
what do I need to do now to get myself back into high standards with myself first,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
then with, the audiology community in general. And I feel like I've done that, right?
Yeah,
It's
good job. Good job. You came
yeah.
back all the way around.
Yeah.
Did you feel like when you got fired,
Oh my
were
gosh.
you totally shocked?
I was shocked, I
You were
was
shocked.
embarrassed, I was humiliated, especially the way he fired me because he really
Hmm.
was not nice about it. And my first thought was, what's everyone going to think, right? What's
Yeah.
everyone going to think? Yeah, because I always want to please and look good in
Hmm.
others' eyes. And
Hmm.
so yeah, it was just a very not a good time in my life.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so
I
I
feel
guess
like,
what I want people to know from that, and you can ask me other questions, but that, sometimes you do have to face yourself and you have to realize that maybe you didn't act the way that you would want to act, and there's all sorts of reasons why that might happen to you.
hmm.
But there is another side. You can get through that and get to another place. And now, I feel like I can look at that time in my life and say, yeah, I'm kind of glad I went through that because then I started working in my own office. The
Hmm.
person that was
Hmm.
there didn't want to work here anymore
Hmm.
because she had always worked in an ENT office. And
Hmm.
so that all worked out for her. She ended up going back to where she was. She was happy. I started working in my office. I realized, oh, I do want to, work in an office again.
Hmm.
And so 20 years later, I'm still here and it's all worked out fine. But
It was
yeah,
all a
it's not
blessing.
something that you
All a
want to go through.
blessing. But I feel like you said, it was almost like he did you a favor because
Yeah,
you didn't support the product. You weren't loving the sales rep side of things. That's where I
right,
feel like just hearing other audiologists, we kind of just had this conversation with another audiologist of people feeling burnt out or
right.
so much negativity online. We just go through the motions. I know so many audiologists who have just had the same job for years and years, whether it's
Yeah,
benefits or they feel stuck or whatever it is, so that was a blessing in disguise that
yeah. I don't
you
know if
got
I would have
fired,
left, I
Yeah.
would have just been not happy. And like, me, then when I did start working in my office, I was like, my main goal is to be happy in what I'm
Yeah.
working at and also be successful, but, figure out how to be in an office and maintain and not get burned out.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, yeah,
Why do you feel like when you think now and think back, like why do you think you were not happy? Was it
yeah,
the workload? Was it the product? Was it like you felt like you didn't really agree with the company? Like what
right.
part of that was like the unhappiness part?
To me, it was definitely the product. Like I
Yeah.
knew things about the product that I was out there having to push it. I had to meet my numbers,
Yeah.
as a sales rep, you have, if the company's telling you something about the product and you kind of know that it's not really that way, you
Yeah.
just don't feel good about it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was a lot of that, I
Like
think. And
internal
then the
conflict.
travel, I was
Yeah.
traveling a lot. I wasn't home a lot. I was in and
Hmm.
out, kind of causing I would come home. I used to laugh. My husband and my daughter are very scheduled people. So they'd have their little schedule and they'd be going along. And I'd fly in and stir it all up and, come
Fly
out. And they
out.
were like, phew, mom's gone. And so I didn't want to be a disruption to my family anymore.
Oh my God. And so that guy did you a favor by firing you. So you weren't a
Yeah.
disruption to the family.
Yes, yes.
Would you say so from those two experiences of getting fired?
Yeah.
We're going to have another conversation maybe about
Yes.
having to fire people or managing people. But in your mind, how would you treat somebody if you had to turn around and fire somebody else? What did
Yeah.
you learn from those experiences? How would you handle it?
Right. So as you can see from the two stories I told you,
Hmm.
how the I as the person felt in each of those different situations. And so for me, just the way that I am, I never want to make someone feel less or bad, or, it's just not a good fit sometimes. And the
Hmm.
person may not realize it, and you just have to be honest with them about it. And so, of course, we're going to talk in another episode about how to fire effectively and some of the
Hmm.
things that you can do. And then also, just knowing what I went through, I never want somebody to feel like that.
Hmm.
You know. I just
Hmm.
wouldn't. So
Hmm.
there's definitely ways to make it easier.
Hmm.
Have you ever had to fire
Love
anybody?
that.
Talk
No,
about that next
not
time?
yet.
No?
No,
Okay.
I haven't. Have you?
Yeah. Yes, I did. I did.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you
Yeah.
can
And
share again. You
I
can
should have
share, and I'm,
before, I should
yeah,
have done it quite a few times and I didn't. And so, yeah. And then that's another good conversation to have is like knowing that you should
yeah,
and yet you don't. And what are those reasons why the person either doesn't leave
yeah,
or you don't do what you need to do to let them go because
yeah,
of different, you're
hmm,
all different reasons, I guess, is
yeah.
why we do that.
Like you said, sometimes you're doing them a favor and they don't even know if
Right.
it's not a good fit or they don't align. So, yeah, that'll be another good conversation for us to have.
Yes, for
Well,
sure.
thank you, Noelle, for sharing.
Thank you. Thank
A
you for
hard story to share and
it
embarrassing
was.
sometimes, but hey, you had two good experiences that shaped you to be able to do it yourself. So
Yeah.
that's
So thank
great.
you. Thank you for having the conversation with me and for
Yeah,
listening.
yeah. Thank you all for joining us
Yeah.
on the Sound Sisters.
And we'll see
See
you
you
next
next
time.
time.
Thanks.